W legends Jerry Lynn and Mikey Whipwreck. Now, let's welcome your host, Mike Freland.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Front Row Material. My name is Mike Freland. I am soon to be joined by my follically challenged co-host. His name is the Ritt. We want to let you know we are brought to you by Future Stars Now. Speaking of Future Stars Now, if you did get a chance to check out our big episode we had last night, which was a moved date to a Monday night instead of obviously our traditional Tuesday, go ahead and check that out. You can catch that entire interview on demand, and that will also be posted to our YouTube channel. And if you would be so gracious to go over to our YouTube channel and go ahead and hit the like and subscribe, we would appreciate that. We're always looking to grow our audience. All right, so as you know, the Ritt and I are filling in for Mikey and Jerry, who are still on sabbatical. So let's go ahead and let's bring him in. Let's bring in the man with the beard, yet still follically challenged. He is the Ritt. Ritster, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on, Freeland? Been a good 24 hours.
I was just about to say, you and I, didn't we just do this dance before, and now we're back at it 2 days in a row?
Hey, yesterday you let me lead. Today, time to you.
We're doing the samba. We're doing the dance. You know what I'm talking about?
We're doing a little salsa.
Oh, we're doing a little Danny Limelight then, huh? Aren't we?
Oh yeah,
nice. That's what I like. But you're doing well.
I'm doing great. I can't wait, man. This has been one of our most recent talked about guests. Everybody wants to see. Everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, no, this is true. This has been somebody that I've talked to many people, and they would love to hear what he has to say. And with that being said, you know what? Let's go ahead and introduce him to the wrestling world. He is known as Crowbar. He has performed in many different wrestling promotions and had a very successful career. He also is a very successful doctor himself. He has his own practice. So he's been successful not only in the world of professional wrestling, but also in the world of life itself. And we can't wait to get a chance to talk to him. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's bring him in here. Crowbar, what's going on, man? How you doing, buddy?
How you guys doing? Doing great.
We are doing awesome.
Awesome.
So first of all, thanks for carving out some time to be with us this evening. We do appreciate it. And, you know, as we had mentioned in the intro, so many people have been wanting from our audience to hear from you because there's a lot of people who are big Crowbar fans. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys. This is awesome.
So the first thing, I guess, is how you been doing ever since this whole craziness with the world's been going on. I mean, it's been anything but easy on everybody. So how have you been? How have you and yours been?
Thank God our business is essential. I own a physical therapy office, and we were open the whole time. And although we slowed down a bit, I'm very thankful we were able to remain open through all this craziness. I really felt bad for anybody that had a restaurant or a gym or a business like that. Really feel for those people a lot. You know, it was a really bad time. I'm very thankful that we were able to remain open. I had to cut some hours here or there, but we remained open. I had to work more. So it was really, really nuts. But thank God I was able to keep working. My wife was able to keep working. And our kids actually go to a Catholic school, which had in-person class. So our kids actually got to go. They were masked up. They were in these little booths with like plastic around them and all that. So it was rough, but you know, thank God, we got through it, and hopefully we don't go back down that road again. You know, who knows? You know which way the world's going now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I also teach at a Catholic school, and we all agreed to meet in person as well. And
nice.
But kids need that. Kids
Absolutely.
need, because I think when you start to disrupt their early part of their life and the foundational blocks of building relationships with other students and just going through things kids should go through. And, you know, this is, it's a difficult time, but we need to focus on we need to keep their lives as consistent as possible at all costs. So,
and just the whole dynamic, if I was 12 or 13, which my kids are, and I was told you have to do your homework or do your classwork at a computer screen and sit there, and my mind would zone out completely, and I feel really bad for the people that had to do this, and I understand that a lot of people needed to, but I just know it was tough. I know if it was for me, growing up way back when they didn't diagnose ADD and ADHD, I definitely have it, and my mind would have been wandering out there. I would have got nothing done. So it's we're real thankful that our kids were able to go, and hopefully this school year kids will be able to go as well.
Yes, I could not agree more. I think the fascinating thing about you is you're not only incredibly successful in wrestling, but outside of wrestling as well. So many different things. Tell people about your life outside of wrestling, just to kind of start things off here as far as working in the medical community.
Okay, well, at 17 years old, I got called into my guidance counselor in high school. She goes, "Chris, what do you want to do?" And I say, "I'm going to wrestle professionally, and I want to be a physical therapist." And she looked at me like I had 18 heads. So I actually pursued wrestling and physical therapy at the same time. I'm a really big believer in delayed gratification. I went to school full time. I had my homework at night. I went to the gym. I wrestled on weekends. I had no social life at all, but I was pursuing two things that I was extremely, extremely passionate about. And, and throughout the years, I would go on, let the road for the weekend, drive here, drive there, go to the hotel when the show was done, have my school books.
Wow.
Everybody was out partying, and I was in the school books. And that was at a time when there was no online classes yet. It was all, you had to open up your book. You had to, open up your notebooks and all that. It was old school. And I always knew that I had to do that. As I said, I got involved at 17 years old. I started going out on the independent scene, and it's not a knock at all. But what I observed were there are a lot of veteran wrestlers out there, and they were doing it, and they were miserable because they were doing it not because they wanted to do it, not because they passionately wanted to do it. They had to do it. And I said, that's not going to be me. I have to make sure that I keep pursuing the physical therapy along with the wrestling. So fast forward 20 years after WCW, I'm 47 years old. I feel great, and I'm in wrestling, and because I freaking love it. It's not fashionable within the wrestling industry to say how much you love the business. I freaking love this business. I love working hard. I don't go out there just to have a showing or to make an appearance. And if you ask anybody on the independents, they'll vouch for it. If you're booked in a match with me, I'm calling the promoter weeks ahead of time. Okay, I'm working with so-and-so. Can you send me some links of his videos? I want to see what he likes to do. I want to see his moves. I want to see what he's all about because I want to tear the house down. So all through with college, I did some WCW stuff. Did the WWE light heavyweight a tournament, graduated, worked for a year, and then finally got signed to my full-time WCW thing. So all through that time, it was a physical therapy school, Indies, ECW, WCW, WWE, back to WCW, and so on and so forth.
Well, I'm just intrigued by your artwork behind you. So
love Star Wars. Freaking love biggest Star Wars mark going.
Okay,
none.
I've got to ask because Han Solo is staring at me right now.
Yes.
What is your most favorite Star Wars movie, and what is the least favorite?
It's not going to be popular, but I'll support what I say. Return of the Jedi. Everybody will say, no, Empire Strikes Back, Empire Strikes Back. I'll tell you why, and it's all relative to when I grew up. You grow up, you see Star Wars, you see Empire Strikes Back, you find out Darth Vader is Luke's father. Mind-blowing. And then you wait for Return of the Jedi, and I'll tell you why Return of the Jedi was so great for me. So Empire, you find out Darth Vader is Luke's father. They have a lightsaber duel, and I remember being in that movie theater and hoping Luke was going to kick his ass. Didn't happen. You go back and watch now. Vader fights him with one arm. He's just messing with him. You fast forward to Return of the Jedi. In wrestling terms, there's a lot of payoffs. You heard about Jabba the Hutt for all this time. You finally got to see. Didn't see Jabba the Hutt in the first Star Wars. In The Empire Strikes Back, you see the hologram of the Emperor. You don't see the Emperor. And then you finally get to see him in Return of the Jedi. And then you see badass Luke. Completes his training, goes with Yoda. He's dressed in black, totally badass. He goes into Jabba's palace, chokes out 2 guards with the Force, and like, wow, this is awesome. And then at the end, you get that great duel between him and Vader. Darth Vader makes the big baby face turn, throws the Emperor down the shaft, takes off his mask. It's loaded with payoffs that everybody wanted to see. And that's why I'll say Return of the Jedi is probably my favorite. My least favorite, you could probably throw out the entire whole new trilogy. Worse than the Star Wars Christmas special.
Wow. You're a big Star Wars fan, aren't you? Aren't you, Ritster?
Yeah.
I am, but apparently I've got to get a new backdrop. I have to one up him now.
That is some beautiful artwork, my friend. And you not only explained it, but you explained it where wrestling fans who don't know a lot about Star Wars would completely get it. So
big payoffs. It was that big culmination of all these little things that have been built up over the years. You find out Leia's Luke's brother. To me, Leia's Luke's sister, rather. To me, not a big payoff. I was like, oh, wow, that's great. It was Darth Vader taking the mask off. It was seeing what Jabba the Hutt looked like, and he looked awesome. It was seeing the Emperor, and then for the first time you saw Sith lightning. I'm like, that was badass. Wow. And then Vader turns good, and you see his face. Come on. Awesome. You can't beat that.
Better than that. Let me kind of ask you this, going back earlier on with your career. You were trained with Iron Mike Sharp, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
So Iron Mike Sharp, I have seen so much of him, and I feel like I know very little about Iron Mike Sharp. Obviously, we know the way he would be brooding around the ring and whatnot, but is there anything you can tell us about Mike himself, the man, what it was like getting to know him and then getting to study underneath him?
The guys that train with Mike Sharp, and a lot of them will testify to this early on. Mike trained. That guy you saw on TV was how he trained. And it would probably sound crazy to people now. Mike Sharp would come out, black boots, black trunks. Once in a while, he would actually wear the forearm band. He would oil up. He came out and trained you like he was going to work at a Madison Square Garden. He was in character. He was meticulous. He trained you hard. And it wasn't until we were there a while that we actually got to see a little bit of like the more real Mike Sharp. Mike would get in there, full gear from TV, work aggressively, and it was something else. Yeah.
Well, he always looked like he was, he stayed in character, like you said before, but was he kind of stiff? I mean, he looked like he could, if he wanted to, he was a big dude. He could lay him in, it looked like.
Huge dude. And as growing up, when I was 17, you always saw Mike Sharp as the enhancement guy. When you watch his work now, when he would do house shows for WWE, so aggressive, he didn't stop. And when you work that style, he would get a guy and just not stop. That takes incredible wind, incredible cardio. And then I would think back, Mike would always be working out. If he wasn't training with us, he'd be off to the side, jog in place, be doing the tubes. He had incredible cardio, and I have such more of an appreciation for his work now when I go back and see it on the network, or, like an old video from like the house shows at MSG or something. He did not stop. He was aggressive. And when you're moving like that, when you're bumping, or even when you're firing up on somebody, to sell and to be vocally engaged, that's when you're tired. That's hard. That's a hard. So he was pulling together the physical. He was animated, and he was also vocal. That's just a testament to what shape this guy was in. You know,
when you were training, was there anybody in your training class or anybody who you kind of bonded with when you were kind of going through that with Mike?
I would say myself, my tag team partner for a very long time, Ace Darling, Mike Supernova Bucci, and his brother Donnie B was there. Those are the notable guys here. And of course, Jerry the Wall Toot.
Yep.
And that was a really cool full circle thing. My first match ever at Mike Sharp's was a battle royal. I was brand new, so they threw me in the battle royal, and I worked a lot with Jerry Toot. At that time, he was known as Big John the Lumberjack, and we worked our first match together. So then you fast forward, whatever it was, to 2000, 2001, whatever it was, and then we went from Mike Sharp's gym, and now we're feuding on WCW, and it was really a cool full circle moment that we were doing that. That was really, really special.
Speaking of those early days, whether it be Mike or, whether it be somebody else, was there anybody who ever pulled you aside and gave you some advice that even today you look back on and you think, wow, that was something that was very profound that I've carried with me, whether it was pertaining to wrestling or just life or anything to that nature? Anybody did that for you that still resonates with you today?
So many people have given me good advice. Actually, when I was 13 years old, I joined a gym in my hometown, and for the first time, I met a pro wrestler and indie guy named Big Sweet William, who would later go on to be Crash the Terminator, who would go on to be Hugh Morris, who would go on to be Bill DeMott. I met him when I was 13 years old, and he'd be in there throwing around ridiculous weight, and I would ask him. I had to be the most annoying kid in the world. I was just this. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about the Warrior? What do you think about Bret Hart? And he would always answer my questions. And then he saw, and I saw it within myself, that this passion for wrestling was becoming so strong that being a fan wasn't going to be enough. And I go, Bill, I'm going to do this. And he said, right then and there, whatever you do, it's great to pursue this. Make sure you get an education. He goes, it's an unforgiving business. It will never love you as much as it will never love you as much as you love it. And you have to find something that will give you stability, whether or not you make it in wrestling. And that always, I always remember that. And that was one of the things that helped to push me when I got involved. Like I said, I saw a lot of the veterans, and they were there, and they hated being there. They hated it, and they were trapped. And I always said, if I'm going to be there at 35, 45, 55, 60, who the hell knows? It's going to be because I love it and I want to do it. And that advice he told me when I was 13 years old, it always stayed here. And I also got that same advice from Jim Powers, who lived probably 5 minutes away from me as well. Also went to that gym, gave me the very same advice. And then both of them stayed right here. And even at the times when the schedule got crazy between school, between work, between wrestling, between working out, I just kept listening. And I knew that if I just muscled through it, that everything would be cool.
So at 13, you're talking to
Yes.
wrestlers, you're getting the proverbial itch, but you also are getting some really good advice too.
Absolutely.
You talk to the folks, and what do your folks think something like this at that age is kind of a phase? Oh, he's interested in this now. What will happen? But as it lingered on and it continued, what was your parents' thoughts on you wanting to wrestle? I mean, obviously, it's a very unique profession
Yes.
that not a lot of kids actually say that. Well, in that time,
Yep.
that they want to do. So, what was the initial thoughts from the family?
Thought it was a phase, of course, and then it got more and more real. And then they say God guides you in the direction. I hate to be preachy, but I'm just gonna say what I think. God guides you in the direction you're meant to go in. I injured my knees when I was 13 and 15 in high school, and that's what led me to physical therapy. Otherwise, who knows what I would have pursued. There was my sister's husband's brother's friend knew somebody on his trucking route. Go figure. Just at the very same time that I'm getting this itch, I'm getting this passion that's growing to be a pro wrestler. He meets a guy named Tom Rumsby, and he works in a factory that's probably a 2-mile walk from me. And he proceeds to find out that he's opening up a wrestling school with Iron Mike Sharp in a year and a half. I go, wow, this is too. I'm thinking even at that age how profound that is, that I'm seeking out how to do this. If you would read the After magazines, you would see the Monster Factory. It was a little far from me. It was way down south, Jersey. That's not to say that if that was the only option, I wouldn't have found a way to get down there. But this opens up. It's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half further north, more doable for me. Still an hour, 15-minute ride down. And I find out that he's going to be opening up this school in Brick Township, New Jersey. And I immediately, it's during June, school's about to get out. So I'm training for football, doing cardio, doing weights. And then I take a job at a catering hall Friday, double shifts during the summer. Saturday, double shifts. Sunday, double. I'm going to earn the money so that I could go to that school. So I worked my ass off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Once I found out that that school was going to be opening up and that it was in a reasonable distance where I could like I could still go to school and still go to there, I knew I was going to go. Then I had to convince my parents to sign a waiver because I started attending school at wrestling school at 17, and I had to give the whole speech. Mom and Dad, it's not a big deal. I'm just doing it for fun. It's fake. There's no way that I could get hurt. I come back to full night and I'm covered in bruises. I mean, I have rope marks on my back, and they lose their friggin' shit. They lose their mind. What are you doing? What are you crazy? Yada yada. So it wasn't well received at first. But I knew in my heart of hearts that's something that I wanted to do. They didn't stop me or try to stop me, although they weren't thrilled with my decision. They just asked that I continue with my educational goals, which I did, and I had no intention at all of abandoning those. So I held up my part of the bargain, for them and also for me personally, and that's how it started. And believe me, my mom is still here, and she'll ask me, "Oh, you got what are you doing this weekend?" "Oh, I got a match." "Oh, you're still doing that shit? You got a good job, you got a career, what the hell is wrong with you?" And but I love it. So,
well, there was a comment up here about the wrestling school also ran shows. Garden
Yes.
State Wrestling Alliance.
Yes, it did.
So from day one, when you started training, how long was it till they said that you were ready? And then how long was it till you thought you were ready to have your first match?
I was in a battle royal in about 3 weeks and petrified.
Oh my
And
God.
then I had my first match probably it was every 2 weeks, I think. So then it was probably 2 weeks later, I had my first match, which was a singles. And it was really funny there. Like Mike let us learn and try a lot of stuff. So we would go out there. Mike really didn't give us times. So those shows would go friggin' 4 or 5 hours because everybody would get in there and they would want to try everything that they knew. You go back and watch some of those Mike Sharp school shows. Those matches are 20, 25 minutes long, and they're as awful as they are long. Some of them are brutal. They're a lot of fun to watch now. I really got to transfer some of them to DVD or whatever they got now, digital, because it'd be really cool to put up. Man, I sucked. We all sucked, and we went way too long, and the crowd was out there. I mean, I have no idea how those people sat there as long as they did, because we all had to get our shit in, and not just some of our shit, all of our shit. The matches were ridiculous.
Kind of following up on that, so the first time you go out there, do you already feel comfortable being in front of an audience, being in front of people, or is that a completely other element or layer to the whole thing? Or did you say, my mind is more on the wrestling, I can kind of block out the people?
Nervous, and I still get nervous to this day. I'm a perfectionist. I'm my own worst critic, and before I go out there, I want to go out there and have the best match. There's a saying where when you stop getting nervous, then it's time to stop. You know what I mean? And way more nervous way back then for that first match, but you never totally lose those little bit of butterflies. And I never have. Maybe some people have. Maybe when you're really, on, for years and years and years doing the big shows, you might lose it. I never have. And I think it's a healthy thing to have. I think it keeps you sharp and it keeps it exciting,
So you graduate from Mike's training camp. You're doing your thing now. You're starting to build up some more confidence. Obviously, Mom is still, we'll say, on the fence about things.
This is totally legit. She used to go to the Mike Sharp shows, sit in like the second or third row, couldn't sit in the front, couldn't take it. And God's honest truth, she would sit there and do rosaries as I had my match. Legit. That's how much she hated it and how worried she was.
That's a mom for that. Hey, that's a mom for you, though. She cares about her baby.
Yes.
So you graduate, you're moving on. What was it like trying to get booked early on after you left Mike's? Did you find that it was challenging, or did you find that it wasn't that bad to start getting gigs in other promotions? So what was that process like of, hey, who's going to hire me?
Yeah, we would just drive around. It was me and Ace Darling or other guys from the show. We would pick a Saturday or a Friday night, and if there was a show we could get to, we would go, even if we weren't booked. Maybe somebody gets hurt, maybe somebody doesn't show up. Maybe somebody misses their flight. Maybe they want to put on a dark match or a preliminary match. We just go. We went in the hole for years before you start to see the fruits of your labors. But if at that time there was no internet, there was no social media, there was nothing like that. You couldn't do a training session and post it somewhere. You had to send out tapes in 8x10s. Tapes you had to send out. VHS tapes. These big thick things. And often guys would get stacks of these. Promoters would get stacks of them. There's no way he's going to see them all. So if you got lucky enough to where they watched yours, great. Or you would hope that somebody that was established maybe took a liking to you, might want to work with you, would put in a word. But when you first start out, it was a lot of driving, a lot of road hours, everybody pitching in for gas, sleep in your car. If you got enough guys, you get a room, you go in, one guy gets a room, and then you squeeze 6-7 guys on the floor just so you guys could sleep. And it was just, you would just go. You would go here. You would go there. You would travel. You would try to make a connection. And if anybody would let you in the ring, you would take that opportunity.
What were some of the payoffs early on? We've actually talked to several different people, and they would say, payoffs, Mike, what are you talking about? Sometimes they would literally give you something from the concession.
That's it. Food.
And thank you.
Yes.
And you would say thank you, and you would simply leave. So it surprises, I think, people nowadays that that's what happened. But kind of go into that. There wasn't always money exchange for you being on the show.
Nope. Especially when you were new, you were basically going out there to get an opportunity to show your wares, to show yourself what you could do. And that old saying, the hot dog and a handshake, that was real. And often you didn't get that, and you went home and, you were in the hole. That's why you try to get 2, 3, 4 guys in a car. That way we're all collectively going in for gas. And if you couldn't find the crew, you went by yourself.
You know, we hear a lot about the road stories and traveling in cars, and it was funny because Mikey and Jerry will always say, oh, it was all cramped up, it was all this or that, but then they'll look back and go, we didn't appreciate it at the time, but you know what? We were all dirt poor, we were all beat up, but you know what? We had some drinks, we laughed our ass off, and I wouldn't trade those moments for anything, and they've even said this, that's what they miss more than anything. It's not about the ring, it's about being around like-minded people that eat, breathe, and drink the same thing you do. It's a community, it's a family. So
I'll say yes, but for me, a huge part is still about the ring. I love the performance. I love the art. I love creating something, having a vision here, and then trying to create it up there. So it's definitely the whole package, the camaraderie, the like-minded people, but it's just as much that in-ring time for me as it is all that. It's all one giant package. You know what I mean?
Me personally, I love to hear road trip stories. I've got to know who your favorite person to travel on the road with and your least favorite person you ever traveled on the road with.
And you may change the names to protect the innocent.
If you want, you can use me as your favorite and use Freland as your worst favorite.
I say without question, my favorite person was Ace Darling, my partner. I love tag team wrestling, and him and I did a lot of work against each other. There was a time when we broke out. Me and Ace were on every indie show against each other, and then eventually we formed a team, and then we tagged everywhere, and we get along great, but we are so polar opposites with some stuff. Like I have a very long fuse, like I have a lot of patience and everything else. If we're slightly lost or running a little later, he would freak out. He would go nuts. He would get real quiet. He would grip the wheel, sighing, and I'm there. I'm like, dude, it was always an experience. And whenever we traveled, something ridiculous would happen. You know, there's always something ridiculous, like nothing's too like crazy, but like we pulled in one spot for gas when there was a show. We were in the suburbs of Boston. We needed gas. I have no idea why. I had like an extra $2 on me, and I bought a freaking scratch off ticket. So I scratch it. We win. Buy another ticket. This goes on and on and on. And this guy behind the counter was, I mean, he looked like Cletus from The Simpsons. And every time we win, he's jumping up. It's like 12 o'clock at night. And it's me, it's Ace. We're in like the woods of Massachusetts. And we're with this guy that looks like Cletus from The Simpsons. He's jumping up and down. Every time we hit something, we end up winning like $75 after like 10 wins in a row. And this guy's going, this is the best night of my entire life. And I'll never forget the name. It was called the Pumpin' Pantry. It was a convenience mart / gas. And he was giving us bumper stickers that said Pumpin' Pantry. You had to take this hat, take this. This is great. Me and Ace still talk about it. Like I texted him a few days ago, and all the text was Pumpin' Pantry, and that was it. And I get the laughing face or the LOL, but it's always this text, you know. And then when we were tagging for WCW, we were up in Milwaukee, and we had got there. There were no rooms. It was around like playoff Super Bowl time. So there was football going on. It was real busy, yada, yada, yada. And we can't find a room. Finally, we find this little beat up shack hotel. We go in, Ken, we get a room, and it's me and him. And this guy behind the desk just goes, okay, well, I run a tight ship here. I want no drugs. I want no whores. I want nothing like that. that's how we greeted us before we even got a room.
Oh my
No
God.
drugs, no, like, I guess he assumed I don't know. I had long bleached blonde hair. He had like the dark hair with the mullet. And I guess we just looked like shady guys, I guess. I don't know. It was really funny. We still talk about it.
Not even good evening or
No.
hey, how you guys doing?
Hey,
no
I got a room.
whoas.
I got a room. No whores, no drugs, and no bullshit. That's what he said.
Wow.
Yeah. And we took the room because that's all there was. And we just laughed the whole time about it.
So traveling, like you said, you pack a bunch of people into a room, obviously to keep costs down. When it came to that, I mean, what did you guys typically do for food? I mean, money was so tight. We've heard that Al Snow said he would take how did he refer to it? He took a Boy Scouts mess kit, and he would hook it to a carburetor, and he would drive around to heat it up, and that's how he would have a warm meal. Now, I mean, obviously that sounds pretty extreme, but what were some of the things? What did your diet consist of in the early days of being on the road and just stopping off at gas stations? Was it just whatever you could get your hands on?
I had a lot of shakes, like at that time, Metrex and Mileplex were big, granola bars, and then if you wanted something else, you would stop off, get a Baby Ruth, get chips, Slim Jim, and I would bring as much food as I could from home because there was a pretty good shot you weren't getting paid at that time. So I would literally have a bag of non-perishables, tuna fish, stuff like that. Bring a can opener, bring bottle of like seltzer or Gatorade or something like that, and I'll put it inside the back seat, or if there were guys with me, throw it in the trunk. I would bring as much as I could from home, and like that was the harsh reality of it because you didn't know whether if you were going to get paid or not. So you really had to watch your budget,
So we start to go down the road of before you get into ECW. Obviously, you competed in the tournament when Shane Douglas vacated the NWA title. You worked with Tracy Smothers as well. We've heard
NWA,
so many good things about Tracy. What are some memories you have about working with Tracy and just Tracy the person?
I was nervous as hell. I was still very young. Dennis Carluzzo had faith in me to put me in that tournament with Tracy, who I thought was incredible. I'm like, oh my God, I'm wrestling Tracy Smothers. We went out there. He gave me a couple things, and watching the match, I sucked now. Compared to now, it was like, wow, I was really terrible. And Tracy Smothers was so good to me and did what he could to make me look great. And I would see Tracy year after year after year, and he would always remember that we worked. He was always glad to see me, always get a real big hug and always have a real conversation. And it wasn't just wrestling talk. He was just a really good down to earth guy. And he genuinely cared. He wanted to make you laugh. He was just, you can't find a better guy than that. Just super, super nice guy.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of people say, the classic Tracy Smothers line is "Hold my watch" when a fight would break out.
Yeah,
but is there anybody else? I mean, obviously, you talked about your tag team partners and Tracy. Was there anybody else you really kind of gravitated towards during your career that you built a relationship that superseded wrestling itself, and it was more a more interpersonal type of relationship?
My first manager at Iron Mike Sharp School was a guy called The Master. His name was Rocco Mazza, huge wrestling fan. And he was actually a substitute teacher at my school. And he was subbing for Shop. And we started talking about wrestling. And I had told him that I joined Iron Mike Sharp School. He was not aware of this. He joined Iron Mike Sharp School. He's like a few years older than I was. Theater background, really great actor, very animated, well-spoken. And so he joins, and we're packaged from Mike Sharp's, and we worked independence as a unit, a lot of different places. And he was the guy that really, we would drive down to Mike Sharp's. He would Often Drive when we got booked at shows, and he's a guy that would often drive. And I often say, if it wasn't for this guy, there would be no Devon Storm, there would be no Crowbar. The guy was awesome. Incredible manager. He had a amateur background. He learned to take bumps, but he just came out at the wrong time. That was at a time when the diva was starting to evolve, and the male managers are starting to phase out more. Incredible performer, very animated, great speaker, great person, just came along at the wrong time, unfortunately. And we still talk to this day. Great guy, just like Ace, he's one of the few people that I still keep in contact with, from that time. And, going back to, it's real funny. I never hung out a lot with guys in the ECW locker room. I was kind of very much hated there. But years later, I was on a plane, and I met Danny Doring on that plane. He was there as doing the team Taz thing when I was there. We really didn't speak that much. So on that plane ride, we started talking about Star Wars. We bond, and we're great friends to this day. And through him, I meet Roadkill, become great friends. And Danny Doring, Roadkill, Little Guido are guys that I really have a good bond with, that I still stay very, very close with, to this day right now.
You bring up ECW, and obviously a lot of people, and Jerry had said this before, he said, I would never work for that company. No way, no shape, no how. He says, well, never say never, because it happened. But
yep.
What was your original thoughts of when they went from Eastern Championship Wrestling? Obviously now they're in Extreme Championship Wrestling. What was your thought on the company once you came in there, and what was your relationship like with Paul?
At that time, and even now, I watch wrestling as a fan, and I watch it as a professional, both. I enjoy it both ways. I loved the product at that time. It really clicked with me. I liked that a lot of the guys wrestled, but they also integrated the props, and props that naturally occurred at ringside. The chairs, they would use microphone wires, the guardrails, stuff like that. I like the style. I like the edgy promos. I like the environment, the crazy environment. I like the music, everything about it I liked. So I had done a few shows for WCW. I did a Nitro against Conan, and then I worked a Saturday night show against Eddie Guerrero. And I was being used like very sparsely on, was also full-time in college at that time. So WCW really wasn't a good fit there, but it was it was an incredible experience. ECW is based mainly out of Pennsylvania, going as far north as Boston, and that was a great fit. So I had gotten a call. I forget the exact show, what the name was, what the name of the show when I debuted, but I got the call the Saturday of that show at like 12 in the afternoon. We want you to come down. We want you to work with Taz. And I was a huge fan of Taz from IWCCW when he was Tasmaniac, working with Ray Odyssey at that time. I always loved it. The furry singlet and the hair, and it was just wild. It was great. And how he evolved to this badass character that hated the world was awesome. And it made sense because it was based off a real thing, with the neck injury and all that stuff. So they go, we want you to work with Taz. We know you worked with Sabu on the indies. We want to rekindle that, but we're going to start you off with Taz. So their little monkey wrench here was 5 days prior, I had my knee scoped for a torn meniscus. I cleared my calendar for 6 or 7 weeks just to make sure I had time to heal. And I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. So they call me at 12. They say, we need you down here as soon as possible. And I can't bend my knee that well, but I wasn't missing the opportunity. So I scrambled around. I had a few doctor friends from being involved with the physical therapy. I had to find one of them on a Saturday that would agree to open up the office, drain my knee, get all that fluid out so that I could bend it and shoot it up with a local so that I could perform. So that happens between 12 and like 4 or 5 or like 4 or 5:30. And I go down to Philly and I arrive late. I didn't want to tell Taz that I had my knee scoped on a Monday because I don't want to think, well, the knee felt great at that point in time because it was drained and I had the local and I felt good. I don't want to tell Paul that he had an injured guy coming in. I wanted to make the most of this opportunity. I was a huge fan of the product. I was getting to work with Taz, which was mind-blowing. And they were discussing rekindling a feud with me and Sabu there. So I went. I got there late. I know that was heat. I couldn't tell them why I was late because I don't want them to know I was injured. I have a match with Taz, and just from that point on, it was just a bad foot to start off with getting there late. I would frequently bring my books to the locker room, and that just wasn't the right culture for that. Wasn't the right culture to bring my school books. I had my books stolen. I had them thrown out, and like I just persevered. You know, I love the product. I was hoping that an opportunity would come, and at the same time, I was going to school full time. There were not enough hours in a day to get it all done. I had to get there ahead of time. I had to open my books. I had to get shit done, and I had to get it done there. You know, there's no online classes. There was an enormous amount of work to get done, and a lot of the talent saw that as disrespectful. You know what I mean? And each his own. And I get it, going by the way the attitudes were back then, the way the culture was back then. But I had to do what I had to do. I was also probably the first guy to bring video games to on the road with me. I remember vividly I had my Sega Genesis hooked up to the hotel room. Guys came in. We'll protect names. They're not important. Hey, we're going out. You need to come out with the boys tonight. But I got, I'm going to hang out. I'm going to study and ADD. So I would study. I would take a break, play some video games to clear my head. I'd go back to my yacht, kick my game system across the hotel room, all kinds of stuff like that. And I worked, and I often speak about this in interviews. You need to be able to survey the situation. You need to be able to assess what's going on and see what's in front of you, whether you like it or not. And I knew at that time, so many guys didn't like me there that even if I worked hard, even if I improved myself, there comes a point when it's not going to matter.
Right.
Because you're so far, it's just not going to change. But the politics of the situation are so far stacked against you. So as bad as I wanted to succeed, as bad as I wanted to really give my all there, as much as I loved that environment, it just wasn't going to happen. And I had my last match with Balls Mahoney, and I went up to Paul, went up to Todd. I said, I thank you very much, but I can't do this anymore. And I left. And, it was a great experience. I did an interview years ago, and the guy, the headline on the internet was Crowbar discusses being bullied in the ECW locker room. I never looked at it like I'm a grown ass man. Yeah. And it was a different time. And I come from a different time. And I tell everybody the adversity there, it made me stick it out. It made me a better person, and it would prepare me for adversity later on in life. All these experiences help you to grow, help mold the person you are. And I never looked at it as bullying. I looked at it as adversity, and you either overcome it and you do better, or you let it cripple you. And I just chose to move on and work harder. And I would I'd show them. That was my attitude the whole time. So I mean, and a lot of those guys I'm totally cool with now. We all grow up. We all become men. We all get families, and we all realize this stupid stuff we've done. And it's really cool to go full circle and to see these guys now. And I don't know. It was definitely a great teaching moment in life. It was a great time for development, and it also let me see that as good as I thought I was with being in the ring and how I worked, I needed to get a lot better. You know what I mean? And it just it opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, and I thank God every day for that experience because it helped mold me into the person that I am now.
It's interesting, the way you look at it is a very positive way. I think a lot of people could go, play the victim route, and say, well, they didn't accept me, or everybody was a jerk, or et cetera, et cetera. And none of that wouldn't be true, but you looked at it a different perspective. And I think because you were focused in that you did see things big picture, I want to get my school done. I do want to go ahead and pursue this career as well. After my professional career is over, I want to be able to, support a family and do certain things. And I often wonder, if some of the wrestlers in the locker room were kind of jealous that you had more going for you, if that makes sense.
Not really sure. It was, I really don't think so. I just think it was more of, but the culture, I think it was rock and roll. It was crazy. It was balls to the wall, tear it up in and out of the ring. And I just didn't fit the culture at that time. I think my mindset fit the in-ring product. I loved going crazy in the ring. I loved working hard. I loved giving my all, but my attitude, the person I was, didn't fit the culture in the locker room, didn't fit that. And as you know, in any work environment, it's behind the scenes stuff that's also very important. And I was also very young, naive at the time, and I didn't get that. And I sat around wondering why. And in hindsight, now that I'm older and I've gone through a whole lot more, I'm 47 years old now, and you realize what the whole situation was. And again, if you asked me this right after I left ECW, those guys sucked. They didn't like me, blah, blah, blah. Now I look back with different eyes, with more experienced eyes, and it really was a great experience for me that helped make me into the person that I am now. And also going through that helped me get through a lot of situations, not just in wrestling, but in life.
Well, during the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of wrestling going on.
No.
And for me personally, once I found your Twitter page, your vignettes, I look forward to each every one, and not just watching one, not two, but I'd watch it 3 or 4 times and just.
Oh, he'll binge watch. Yeah,
and I'm not just binge watching just one, after another. I'm watching just one repeatedly because every time I'm sitting there watching it, I catch this piece and catch that piece. And one of my most favorite ones, and I told Freeland this a million times, is the big debate that you purposely, in my opinion, tried to crash Twitter. Which is better, NWO or the Bullet Club? Now, how did you come up with that big whole facade there?
I can't take full credit. As you know, as we discussed before, I have a physical therapy facility. I work a lot. In my spare time, I really try to spend as much time with my wife and kids as much as I can. I try to keep it controversial and fun and topical when I can, when I see something that's worth commenting on. So a little bird, we'll say like a follower of mine, said, hey, there's this big debate going on the past couple of days between the Bullet Club and the NWO. And I said, really? I said, well, and I kind of get, I'm very familiar with the NWO. I know what the Bullet Club is. I'm very familiar with the guys that are in it, but I also know the fan base. And I love wrestling fans, but I also know how to push buttons. And so this guy says, hey, there's this war going on between the NWO fans and Lena Bullet Club fans. Might be something you might want to do. Can you think of something? And I'm like, I'm at work right now. Let me think of it in the back of my head. And ADD, I could work and I could think of something, and I got to have a million things going on, and it's all swirling. So I'm working, doing notes, working out when I'm done with work, and this promo is swirling. It's festering in here, and I'm getting little things, and I take out my phone. Okay, I got a. That's a good line. Let me write that down. Let me write this, and it's a process, and I have to write it down before I forget it. I have a notepad at my bedside. I have notepads all over my house and at work. If I think of something, I got to write this down because it's cool before I forget about it. It's probably going to piss people off, or in the best way possible. And that was actually, I was tipped off by a friend or a follower friend, and you got what you got. and it actually fit in with my previous wrestling stuff. I wrestled Hall Nash with Ace 2 weeks in a row on Nitro in a tag match, and we got squashed both times. So it actually fit great.
Man, I just loved it. And there you are. That brings up my next question.
I have done a few interviews, and I usually have a vitamin water and seltzer, and I've been bitched out. How could you not come on with a glass? So I have a little bit just for you guys. It may or may not be the red vitamin water. That's up to you. That's up to your imagination.
Well, our good friend and our good Canadian, Mr. Butt, he wanted me to sit there and talk a little bit about red wine. So,
Mr. Butt, I do like red wine, by the way. I just don't have it that often.
So, what's your favorite kind of wine? The flavors. Do you go wine tasting?
I do not. I don't want to pull back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz here, but I go to work. I play video games. I love wrestling. I do like a Pinot Noir. We just got back from Florida. Love theme parks and all that type of stuff. But maybe I have this alter personality back there somewhere that just has to come out, maybe. But I do like wine, and I do like Pinot Noir. Yes, I just have it here and there.
You touched upon this a few minutes ago about how they wanted you in ECW to maybe rekindle the Sabu feud. And I think that is fascinating on so many different levels. Can you kind of touch upon a little bit about what that was like meeting Sabu, working with him, and starting to build up that chemistry in that feud itself?
He is another one of those guys. There's many people that I can say this about, and each one, it's true 1,000%. Each person played their role. If it wasn't for Sabu, I would have never gotten the notoriety or the recognition that I had gotten there. Devin Storm would probably just be an indie guy, and there would have never been a Crowbar and yada, yada, yada. Dennis Carluzzo from New Jersey that ran the NWA booked me against Sabu. I forget why he wasn't in ECW at the time, but it was like between the time when he was with WCW and ECW. I'm really not sure the circumstances, but he was doing indies, and I wrestled him at the Woodbury Armory. New green kid. I was probably, I'm trying to think, maybe 19, and he let me shine. He let me do all my stuff. He trusted me to take all his stuff. And at that time, he was white hot. He was a hot commodity on indies. And he asked me what I wanted to do. He asked me if I was comfortable doing this, and all his stuff. And I said, yes. And we just tore it up. But I mean, there's a caste system, especially back then in wrestling, where you work with a veteran, you do whatever they say. Maybe they'll give you a lot, maybe they won't. This guy let me do what I could do. He let me shine just as much as he let himself shine that night. And had it not been for that match, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And I'm eternally grateful to this guy. We always have great chemistry when we work together. And, I would personally love to mix it up again.
What would you say when it comes to Sabu that has made him so successful over the years? A lot of people believe it's his high flying style. A lot of people believe it's his motor that just goes. Knowing him on a personal level as well, what do you think it is that makes the audience so drawn to Sabu?
Well, I take myself out of this as a professional first, and I'll be a fan. Okay. I first saw the videos of him that would go around and, around the time when I was breaking in, VHS, they would have all the tapes from Japan, from the indies. And I saw this guy. And first of all, his outfit was unique. He had these baggy ass pants and the belt around his waist. His hair's all down in his face. He's all scarred up. He was a character. And I say this a lot on interviews. Let's look with Sabu first, okay? And then we could expand upon it. But he was a character. He made you want to watch him. There was an X factor there. And then when he got in the ring, he would just do amazing stuff where you would go, oh my God, that's crazy. And so it was everything. It was his look. It was his gear, the way he carried himself, the way he would dive at your leg, which nobody was really doing at the time. He looked like a wild animal diving at you. And it was just new. It was original, and it was stuff that nobody had ever seen at that time. And I think it was all those things combined that just made it so special. Plus the fact he would just take the most outrageous risks, you knew if you watched that match, you knew you would see something very, very special. And, that's basically it. I hope that helps. Yeah.
No, it definitely does. A fan, knowing you were coming on tonight, sent me a video link to the steel cage match that you and Sabu had, which was great. Do you have a favorite match or moment that you had with Sabu in the ring?
It would be that match. We were working for the WWWA. We had done a match in Las Vegas, which was a no DQ match, and then we followed that up with the cage match, and it was really cool. Not many people saw that pay-per-view at all. Not many people have seen that match at all. But for me personally, we knew that we would be really highlighted on that card, and I had about a month and a half to think about how we could be in a cage, tell a story, do some real cool stuff, and to actually think about it, plan it, and then see it come to reality and come to fruition on a pay-per-view was just an amazing experience. We have great chemistry together. We've always clicked well, with wrestling, with the high spots, with the props, with the cage and all that stuff. And that match, for me, we did some wild stuff. We did the dive off the cage. He jumped to the top of the cage, dropped the leg. We used fire. We did all this wild stuff. And I think we made sense. It wasn't what you would call in wrestling a clusterfuck. We told a story. And if you watch that match, there's a natural progression of violence. It goes, it builds. We start off, we no weapons, then we introduce the chair, then we introduce the guardrails and the tables, and it builds, and it culminates with fire, and then like a big leg drop from the top. There's a whole story there, and I'm very proud of that match, and it's probably my favorite match that I've done.
Speaking of matches, and just kind of taking a sidebar here, how do you go about putting a match together? So you, an opponent, you sit down. Do you have a specific way that you like to lay out a match? Is there certain things that you go into it going, I'd like to do X, Y, Z, or do you kind of go into it open-minded and just saying, let's kind of collab here and see where it takes us?
I love to prep. I was recently booked for GCW, and they told me I was going to work Ricky Shane Page. And I always want to have a great match. So I said, hey, get me as many links as you can of this guy. I want to check him out. I want to watch it. So I did cardio for like, a week straight. And each time I had a session, I was watching Ricky Shane Page, and I had my little notebook, and okay, he likes to do this move. This move looks great. This looks great. And he does a lot of great stuff. And I had heard that he was like a deathmatch guy. And they sent me wrestling matches of Ricky Shane, and he was fantastic. Very agile for a big guy. The way he carried himself was really great. And and the more I watched him, the more I got excited. And you start to see what this guy does, and I was okay. Wow, that looks good. That's good. Maybe we could do this, and I'll tie that into what I do here. And I get very excited, very passionate. It's like a project, and I try to be very proficient and know what my opponent does. Some promoters think I'm a pain in the ass. They'll call me and say, we want to book it. Okay, who am I working? And I want to know, because I want to go out there, have a great time, and I want to kill it. So I'll ask who, so that I could research this and just bring things up. So that being said, I like to say I have a foot in each school, old school and new school. And you'll meet a lot of the old school guys say, you called it in the ring. I've never called it in the ring. I've always been a guy that I like to see the story. I like to think about what the story should be. I like to know what moves I want to do, what moves he does. And I have a photographic memory, A, B, C, D. And if you ask anybody that works with me, that's how I like to plan my match. And then there's always room to ad lib stuff, depending on the crowd, depending on what you feel. But I like to have a basic blueprint. That's how I work. It's not old school. It's more new school. And I used to take a bunch of shit for it too. When I broke in, the older guys would say, oh, like, you're doing it all wrong, kid. You got to call it out there, yada, yada. And I can do that. I just find that the matches are way better when I have time to let my imagination think about what I want to do and create something like that. I just think when you put the work in, it just comes out so much better. For me.
We've often heard that the famous story of Savage and Steamboat, WrestleMania 3, the whole legal pad thing, where Savage would sit down with Steamboat and they'd write, and Savage would then call him up. What's number 84? What's spot 16? And, would you say you can understand that aspect?
Yes, absolutely. That's how I think. That's how I work. And ironically, I'm a huge Randy Savage. He's my favorite of all time is Randy Savage. But that's how my brain works. I'll come up with a spot. I'll write it down. May not know exactly where it's gonna go, but I'll have it. I'll have a highlighter. I'm very meticulous. I'm very visual the way I do it, and like I like to create. I'm very visual. I like to create, and I might write something down, and I'll put a question mark here or here. That's how my brain works, and it helps in the ring, because often my opponents might get lost, and I just have a knack to remember and just flow with it. And it's always been an asset. If you watch that cage match, there is a definite progression. There's a story. And I remember being there that night, boom, boom, boom. And it was just, that's how my brain works.
You had mentioned, you touched upon GCW, and obviously, we've seen Mr. Nick Gage most recently.
Yes.
And personally, whether you agree with him or not, he gets eyeballs.
Absolutely.
He gets attention. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Sure. Don't get caught up in all the other stuff. He gets people, he brings Absolutely. People to the gate, and they pay their money and they go to have a good time. So sure. With that being said, what's your thought on the more ultra violent stuff, as far as, a lot of people say ECW was often calm, maybe Bambi-like, as far as GCW and some of the other things like CZW and the big deathmatch tournament they have in a big cornfield in sure. Pennsylvania or New Jersey. But What's your thoughts on GCW and the way they do business?
Now, before the GCW fans jump on me, I'm not a deathmatch Chris Ford the fan. I get nothing from the deathmatch.
Right.
That being said, I was aware that Nick Gage is the king of the deathmatch, and I was very curious how him and Chris Jericho would meet. And I was like, I have to see what they're going to do. I'm very, very curious. Great idea. It's out of the box. It's out of left field. As much as I don't like to watch death matches, I was extremely curious as to what they were going to do. And I acknowledge that there is a portion of the population that want to see that. I had a few patients that are deathmatch, and they were ape shit that Chris Jericho was going to fight Nick Gage. So you can't knock it. There's interest. There's something there. Chris Ford, the fan, I'm not going to watch deathmatch wrestling. I'm a huge fan of the ECW-esque, what I would call, I always say with the Sabu Van Dam, Jerry Lynn style. There's wrestling, there's technical stuff, there's props involved, and they're usually props that naturally occur at ringside. You know, way back when you had the table and it was the like announcer's table, and that evolved to the tables just stacked underneath the ring, and that's just accepted now. But I'm a huge fan of hardcore matches where you use naturally occurring things that occur at ringside: a chair, a guardrail, a ring bell, a power cord. Was going to say microphone wire, but they don't have wires anymore. But the old school had wires. If you have mats, you pull the mat up, and oh wow, he's pulling up the mat to expose the floor. That's violent, and that's what the kind of hardcore wild stuff that I like, and I like it when it's integrated with technical wrestling. That's what I love to watch, and that's with the style that I like. I'm not a fan of the barbed wire. I'm not a big fan of light tubes, although I wrestled Ricky Shane Page, and I talk shit about death matches for a full year straight. I said, what better ending was for this asshole to get his due and eat some light tubes? No one's going to believe it. And it's just a good ending to that story. The bad guy got what was coming to him. And I remember the pop was great. And I saw a few fan cam footages. He hooked me for the power bomb. We have the bundle of light tubes on a guardrail. And I hear somebody goes, he ain't taking that. Everybody's assuming the veteran's not going to take that. And then I have Ricky hook me up. He brings me up. I kick. He brings me up. I kick again. And then he posts. And I hear the fan go, oh, yeah, here we go, backdrop. And then he brings me up. He power bombs me. Shit flies everywhere. And no one expected it. So it fit. Not my favorite kind of match. That was the last move of that match. It was the culmination. It was me facing my doom. And it was the last thing we did. So it fits. And there was a place and it made sense.
You make a good point, though. I mean, if you are going to go that route, have it mean something. Don't just have it for no purpose, because at that point in time, you're watering down the story you're trying to tell. If you're going to use something big, have it be, the ending.
And I'm also a huge safety guy. It was the last spot of the match. We crushed. It was like 12 of them in that bundle. I was pinned. I wasn't going to roll around in that stuff and mutilate my body. It was the last spot. I took him once, glass went everywhere, and then that was it. But I wasn't going to wrestle in that for 10 more minutes.
So kind of going along,
safe way to do it, or the safer way to do it.
Going along the storyline here, you stopped by and you had some time in WWE.
Yes.
Who reached out to you, or did you reach out to them? And how did that relationship become a thing?
At the time, WCW had a very strong cruiserweight division. you had the Malenkos, the Benoits, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, yada, yada, yada. WWE was now going to have their light heavyweight division. And for years, Dennis Corluzzo would bring in Jim Cornette, and he would often manage me and Ace. Had a great rapport with Jim, and at that time, I was a well-known cruiserweight guy on the independent. So Jim gave me a call. He said, "Yeah, we want to put you in the cruiserweight tournament, or not cruiserweight, light heavyweight tournament with Taka, yada yada." And I had that opportunity. I was still full-time in school, and now I had experienced WCW, ECW. I'm still in school, and now I'm doing WWE, which was totally mind-blowing at the time.
Since you've mentioned Jim, I got to bring him up here. Is a lot of Jim shtick, or is a lot of Jim just Jim? And I know from a business standpoint, he garners a huge audience, and he's got a lot of people who follow him. I think he's a very knowledgeable guy. However, Jim's unique with how far sometimes he takes his comments. What's your take on Jim the person and Jim the performer, if there is any difference between the two?
And the answer is, I don't know. I know him from shows.
Okay.
He was very good to me and Ace Darling bringing us up to WWE. But I've only really known him in that capacity. We really never had an outside the ring, like, go out for a meal or hang out outside of wrestling. But he's always been exceptionally good to me professionally, and I loved working with him. And I know he has a lot of heat. It's really funny. I am very cordial or friendly with or cool with a lot of guys that hate each other. I'm very grateful to Jim for so many reasons. And he's another one of those guys that I could say had not been for his help bringing me into that light heavyweight tournament, I may have never been, had those eyeballs on me to go to WCW later. And then you talk about Jim Cornette. One of the guys that gave me my biggest break was Vince Russo. And I'm so cool with Vince. And I'm so grateful for everything that he did for me. Had it not been for him, there really would never be Crowbar and that push and that gimmick. So those are two guys that are polar opposites, can't stand each other. And they're both very near and dear to my heart. And I will always be indebted to both of them for my career. I love both those guys.
Wow. If you could use one word to describe Jim Cornette, what would you pick?
Funny as all hell.
He seems like he would be a funny guy.
Yeah.
What about Mr. Russo?
I don't know what word I'll use a phrase. He gave me the break, and he gave talent a lot of leeway and encouragement to be free to develop their characters. I don't know what you would call that, but he would come up with an idea. He wouldn't force it down your throat. He would say, "I'm thinking of this. What can you do with it?" And he would say yay or nay, but he would always give you an opportunity. And there were quite a few times where he said, "Yeah, that's great." So I'm a very creative guy. I like to think. I love wrestling. I love creating. I love painting on the easel of pro wrestling. And he really enabled me to do that. Just both of them, awesome guys.
A lot of people say the way they do things in WWE is much different than when they do things in other promotions. Would you agree with that? Would you say there is definitely a formula, at least when you were there, of this is what they do? It was a smooth operating machine. Everybody kind of knew where they were supposed to be, or was it a little bit different for you?
What I was doing, I was basically doing a car crash match. It was a light heavyweight stuff, so my stuff really wasn't that high up on the food chain of a Raw or anything. They wanted light heavyweight stuff, fancy moves, high flying, yada yada. So I really probably didn't have the pressure other talent did. It was basically go out there, have a great light heavyweight match, give us 8 minutes, 9 minutes, what have you, and get the hell out. So I really wasn't there where I had to create anything. I had to go out there, and it was more my athleticism that was highlighted more than a character, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. Let me ask you this question. So you have your time in WWE, and then obviously WCW comes around.
Yes.
Do you feel like you were a different person? Obviously, by the time you reached WCW, you've had so many experiences with so many different promotions, so many different locker rooms you'd been in. Had the person that you are, not necessarily the character, but the person evolved and changed differently the way your outlook was on the business by the time you reached WCW?
Personally, my life had changed a lot. I had graduated. I had worked for a year. I had my degree. So all those stresses were gone. All the studying and all that stuff was gone. It was removed. I had completed it. I had my degree. No matter what happened, I always had that to fall back on. It was done. It was complete. That chapter was closed, done. I get the call to go down to WCW. I'm on a Saturday night show. I'm first being groomed to be a light heavyweight guy. They asked me to move down to the power plant, just to get sharp. So I'm living in Atlanta for the first year, and I'm literally wrestling every single day and loving it. I'm training every day, wrestling, and watching film every day, getting critiquing my own stuff again and again, and I'm just getting sharper. At that time, I was being groomed to be brought up as an aggressive light heavyweight. The next guy to come up to, like the Nitro eventually. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I was doing. Working guys like Kidman on Saturday night, Vampiro on Saturday night, Mike Sanders, Jamie Noble, Chris Benoit, and guys like that. And then the story goes, Vince Russo saw me in a bar following an event, walked in, leather jacket, long black hair. He goes, "Who is that guy?" Yada, yada. At that time, David Flair's hot. He's drawing ratings, but he can't wrestle, or he's very weak in the ring. So they decide that they're going to find a guy that could wrestle well, be his tag team partner, and then put them together as a tag, and I would end up doing all the work, and that ended up being me. At that time, he's whacking people with a crowbar. I'm named Crowbar now, and that's how it goes.
Wow. When it comes to WCW, in your time spent there, what would you say was your most enjoyable aspect of that? Was there a time, was there any moment that you felt, man, everything is starting to come together. This is where I want to be?
It was really cool being on Starrcade, which was their version of WrestleMania, of course. And I'm wrestling Terry Funk for the hardcore title, who I'm a huge Terry Funk mark. It's surreal that I'm going to wrestle Terry Funk for a title at Starrcade. Hands down, that's it right there. Wow.
So, kind of putting a little bit of a bow tie on this. I know I'm speeding through this because, of time, but let me ask you this. When you look at your wrestling career, anything you wish you would have done differently, anything that you wish you would have done more of, or somebody you would have gotten a chance to maybe work with in the past, anything like that you look back and say, I wish I would have?
Wish I would have had the opportunity to work with Rob Van Dam. I've worked with Jerry Lynn, worked with Sabu, worked with X-Pac. Those three guys when I was coming up, if you were getting the tapes, if you were watching the videos, it was 1, 2, 3 Kid, Jerry Lynn, Sabu, Rob Van Dam. That's the one guy I'm missing right now. I wish I would have got to work him, but all in all, the whole career, it just worked out great. WCW ends. I have a few dark matches for WWE, and I always tell the story. Had I got picked up, I would have never met my wife, never had my kids, never opened my business. So, and I'm rushing through it now here too. I mean, God has a plan. It couldn't have worked out better. And now I'm in a situation where life is great. I have a very successful business, not being snarky about it. I'm just saying I have a very successful business, which in turn enables me, empowers me to still participate, to still wrestle, do something that I freaking love doing on my terms. And I'm probably having the best time of my life right now.
It's so awesome. You said in the beginning of the interview that, things put you in a certain position, and that some people may or may not buy into that, but it resonated with me. Everything happens for a reason, and there is a path. And I do believe if you open up your eyes, you will see signs, messages, whatever you want to call them, that put you in a spot for a reason that leads to something else that, I don't know. I just think you have to keep your eyes and your ears open, because if this wouldn't have happened, then it wouldn't have led to this, and I wouldn't have become the person I would have been. And like you said before, with your career, your wife, your children, your successful practice, maybe some of that stuff wouldn't have happened had the other things prior to that not happened. So I get that completely. I've experienced some of that in my life as well. So,
and at that moment, you might not see it. I'm going back now. I'm years removed from it, and you see the path is so clear. At that moment, like, ECW sucked for me at the time. Had I not left, WCW may never have happened. WWE light heavyweight division may not have happened. If things went well, I may have stayed, and being young, naive, I might have done some crazy stuff in the ring and gotten hurt, gotten crippled. Who knows? At the time, WCW folds, and and a lot of the insiders are saying, "Oh, a Crowbar is definitely going to get picked up. You could put him with a Raven. You could put him here. Blah blah blah." Yeah, it never happened, and at that time, I was devastated. And now, in hindsight, had that happened, I would never met my wife, never would have had my beautiful kids, never would have opened my business, which that has really opened doors and enabled me to be here, to do this, and to do wrestling on my terms, not because I need to, because I effing love it. I freaking love doing it. I'm having a hoot of a time. But the promos are fun, the new characters fun, and it's when you look back years later, the path couldn't be more clear that you were led on. And I know that sounds campy. I don't want to be
not at all
preachy at all, but it all worked out for a reason,
I would love to get the opportunity to twist your arm to come back and do a part 2 if there's any interest on your side as well.
Absolutely. There's a lot to tell.
There is so much to do, and I feel like I kind of just skimmed over some of the stuff because you seem like a very passionate person and you critically think about things. And I think for people who like that, who dig that stimulating conversation and who really like to get into the nuts and bolts, it's interviews like this that really allow you to connect with a star and allow you to get to see them on a whole different level. But my follically challenged friend, Mr. Ritt, he has the question, and you, my friend, are an intelligent man. You may go ahead, Ritt, and
Here
ask the question. I'll sit back.
Hot tub time machine. You can go back in time to any point in wrestling history, any match, take somebody out, and insert yourself in. What match is it?
Any match against Randy Savage.
Whoa.
I can actually see you guys calling each other back and forth, just like Freland says.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, it'd be ridiculous.
Did you ever have a chance to meet Randy?
My first time in WCW, he was still there. That's when I had the full body gear with the mullet and all that. And I got to see him, and I was starstruck, and I wish I took a picture. I mean, I watch Randy Savage every single day, and I always pick something up. He was a great athlete. The character was great. If you watch the way he talks, he uses hands, There were mannerisms that made you watch. Incredible athlete. And I use this term a lot. Pageantry, the capes, the headbands, there was so much there. And I think a lot of that pageantry has honestly been lost a lot with wrestling. I really missed the pageantry, and he was one of the guys. Him, Flair with the robes. I watched Savage a lot. I watched Steven Regal a lot. Lord Steven Regal.
Yes.
For the same reasons. I'll tell you why. Grandiose, royal music. The cape, whatever looked like the robe, the royal robe. Once in a while, he had on a white powdered wig. Sir William in the outfit with the umbrella. Wrestling gimmick, pageantry. He gets to the ring. All that shit comes off, and you saw incredible work rate. It was the full package. You had pageantry. You had a believable character. He looked at you like he smelled a turd, and you knew he was looking at you, and you believed it. But when all that was swept aside, you saw incredible matches, full, complete package there. Randy Savage too. You believe the character, you love the pageantry, great matches.
And we appreciate
my two
those
favorites.
people.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Every day I'll watch them both, and I'll always find something.
And I'm so glad that he is part of NXT and he is working with people and he's using his mind to help the next generation, because I have said this to Ritt. I do love Lord Steven Regal, and you can call him William Regal, but he will forever be he and Bobby Eaton.
With Sir William. I loved him with
with
the manager. Oh, it was a great package. I love it.
So we didn't even get to touch upon a whole lot about the medical profession. We're going to get that in part 2 with you. But let me ask you this really quickly. Where can people find you? Where can people get a hold of you? Where can promoters book you? The whole 9 yards. The floor is yours.
I started Twitter in 2017. I didn't touch it for 2 years because I just didn't have time. I was doing the Facebook thing, locally. It was mostly with the town people, promoting my business, yada, yada, yada. I got on Twitter in 2019. It's all I'm really doing right now. It's all I have the time for right now. So you go to @WCW Crowbar, and all my contact stuff is there. And that's it. Right now, that's all that's going on right now.
Do you have some merch? People can go out and get some shirts and whatnot?
I do not, but I actually I got paperwork from Pro Wrestling Tees. They will be coming out soon, as well as video messaging in my promo form. You'll be getting the black and white. You're going to get the music, the subtitles, and I guarantee you they won't be nice. I'll get your message across, but they're going to be pretty douchey.
I love it, my friend.
You're gonna get Crowbar the character.
I love it. You are a gentleman, and I mean that in the most sincerest way. This has been a joy, not only for myself, but for our audience. We will, if it fits into your schedule, do a part 2, because there's so much more meat on the bone, my friend. Crowbar, thank you so much for your time, my friend.
A lot of fun, guys. Thanks so much.
We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Wow. I'm telling you, you meet people, and there are some people that you could sit down and you could have a Pepsi, if you will, and have a drink with somebody and talk to them for hours. I feel like we got a fire pit in our backyard. I feel like we could sit out there on a beautiful night and just talk. And that's what I love. There's some people that you interview and then you meet, and it's very much just the wrestling aspect of it, right? But when you get to kind of peel those onion layers back and you get to hear about this person and the way they live their life and how things came about and seeing things in a bigger picture. And I don't know, I jones for that kind of stuff. So my inner spirit feels good when I have moments like this. And so many people love Crowbar. He is well known to this day, and I could not be happy enough for his success, not only on a professional level, but he stayed true to himself. He went to school. He has his own practice, and he's got his family. The dude did it his way. You know, I mean, if I'm going to steal a line from Frank Sinatra, I did it my way, and he did it his way. So anyway, what was your takeaway from everything, Ritster?
Rand Freeland, Twitter was blown up ever since we made the announcement about this guy.
Yes.
And he fulfilled everybody's wishes.
He over-delivered. Over-delivered.
Yes. And there's no way we could have got everything. He went overtime for us.
Overtime.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And there's no way that we would ever be able to do everything in just one interview. And I am so glad and grateful that he's willing to come back a second time, you know, for part 2.
Love it.
These fans love this guy. I love this guy. I can't wait to every time. I'm like, oh, shit. It's a new promo. Back up, everybody. I need some time. We got to watch this.
You will text me in the middle of the night, and you'll be like, hey, did you catch that news promo? Did you watch it? I was like, I haven't got a chance to yet. Well, I watched it 4 times already. Like, there you go.
Yeah, and it's just, like he said, for, like, controversy. But it just gets wrestling being talked about. And I love hearing other people's, you know, ways and opinions on different stuff, and he does it with such class and etiquette.
Yep.
Unlike the panel we're going to be having on.
No,
soon.
don't get me started on these weirdos. Oh, geez. Guys, we do apologize. We were going to start our panel earlier on, but this was just so good. There are moments that you have that you don't want to steal too much of a star's time. But if all of a sudden you kind of like toe the line and then you step a little over the line, you're like, come on, give me a little more. It's fantastic. But don't go anywhere. We're going to take a small break. But when we come back, it's panel time. Our panel of wrestling experts and minds are going to be discussing some of the biggest news that's happening right now in the world of wrestling. So don't go anywhere. More of our own material when we return.